Hey, welcome everyone. In this occasion, I will talk to you about adverb clauses. Adverb clauses is the third kind of clause that we are going to study and the last kind of clause there is, because you gotta remember that we have noun clauses, relative clauses, and adverb clauses. And that's it, okay? There are no prepositional clauses, there are no pronoun clauses, there are no conjunctional clauses. None of that exists. We only have three different kinds of clauses, and they are noun clauses, relative clauses, and adverb clauses. Now, guys, as the name implies, an adverb clause is like an adverb, right? An adverb clause or an adverbial clause is going to perform the role of an adverb. That is to say, an adverb clause tells you when, where, why, how long, under what condition something happens, right? Adverb clauses, just like adverbs, tend to modify most of the times the verb, right? The action being carried out in the independent section if we are talking about only two clauses, right? If we have an independent clause and a dependent clause, obviously the adverb clause is going to be, if it's modifying the verb, is going to be modifying the main verb, the verb that corresponds to the independent section. Now, normally adverb clauses are going to do that, to modify the verb, but it may be that the adverb clause also modifies an adjective or another adverb, right? Bear that in mind, please. Now, as you know, all clauses are introduced by specific words. We have the case of relative clauses that are introduced by relative pronouns and relative adverbs. We have the case of noun clauses that are introduced by interrogative pronouns, interrogative adjectives, interrogative adverbs. They are introduced by a couple expletives as well. Now, adverb clauses are introduced by a class of words that we call subordinating conjunctions, okay? We call them subordinating conjunctions. We can also call them subordinators, okay? If you hear the term subordinator and not subordinating conjunction, it is the same thing, okay? And we are going to work under the assumption that adverb clauses establish 8 basic relations, okay? They are going to establish 8 different basic relations. And you need to bear in mind that some of these conjunctions are going to overlap. What do I mean by that? To overlap, yes, to overlap means that sometimes you have a subordinating conjunction that can introduce an adverb clause of cause, but it can also introduce an adverb clause of time, or it can introduce an adverb clause of manner. I am speaking specifically about the case of the subordinator as. As can show you can establish a relation of time, of cause, or of manner. Now, what this conjunction does is to join the clause to the independent part, right? So we need this word, and you need to understand that comparing to noun clauses and relative clauses, these words, these connecting words, are numerous, okay? We have different subordinators that introduce adverb clauses, and we also have certain phrases and certain constructions that can work as subordinating conjunctions. And another key aspect that you need to remember is that, contrary to some noun clauses and some relative clauses that can omit the introductory word, subordinating conjunctions must always be present in the clause. We cannot simply omit the subordinator. If we do that, that is going to create a run-on sentence or a comma splice. That is going to be definitely wrong, so we gotta be careful with that. We cannot omit the subordinating conjunctions from the adverb clauses. So as I was telling you, Adverb clauses establish 8 different kinds of relation between the clause and the verb. Normally, I repeat, that's normally what happens. Although an adverb clause, because it is basically an adverb, right, in function, then it can also be modifying the adjective or another adverb. But I repeat, once again, I'm repeating myself a lot on this, but I need it to be clear. Most of the times, the adverb clause is going to be somehow affecting the verb in the principal clause, in the main clause. So we have adverb clauses of place. Examples of subordinating conjunctions that introduce an adverb clause of place are where or wherever. And if you are a little confused right now, because you may say, hey, but where is a word that we use to introduce relative clauses? And yes, you are right. Where is a word that introduces relative clauses. What's more, where can also introduce noun clauses. So if you are confused on this aspect right now, so how are we going to know? How do I know if a clause that is introduced by the word where is actually a relative clause or a noun clause or an adverb clause? Well, all you need to remember is that these clauses do different things, right? They are classified according to specific parts of speech. And remember that parts of speech do different things in the sentence. So we have these words. We have more words, of course. Well, not in the case of place. I think I may be wrong, but I think where and wherever are the only subordinating conjunctions that introduce adverb clauses of place. I may be wrong about this, okay? So you might want to check the lesson to make sure what I am saying is true. We have adverb clauses of time. Words that can introduce adverb clauses of time are, for example, before, as soon as, after, yes, until, when, yes. Again, when, I know that when is a word that we can use to introduce relative clauses. We can also use when to introduce noun clauses, and the difference is going to be on how we use it, on what the clause is doing. If the clause is acting as a noun, if it's acting as a subject, then I know that's a noun clause. If the clause is actually acting as an adjective, if it's modifying an antecedent, either a noun or a pronoun or a noun equivalent, then I know it's a relative clause. But if it's modifying the verb, yes, then I know it's an adverb clause. Then we have adverb clauses of cause that show you, of course, why something happens, right? Or something happens, something happened, something will happen, something should happen, something may happen, etc., right? Examples of words that introduce adverb clauses of cause are, well, of course, the most common word is because. We can also use since, as, inasmuch as. Is not used much anymore, but you may find it especially in your working literature. When you're working in literature, you may find this word, this phrase actually, inasmuch as, and it shows cause, okay? We have adverb clauses of comparison as well. A word that we can use to introduce adverb clauses of comparison is, for example, the word than, right? Now, then we have adverb clauses of purpose. We have the examples of subordinators are so that and lest. Lest is used like a purpose to avoid a negative outcome. For example, if I say you should put away your toys lest your cousin wants to take them home, right? Lest in Spanish, it would be like no vaya a hacer qué. I interpret it that way, and do not confuse the word lest with least, okay? They are different words, they are spelled similarly, but of course they are very different in their usage. We have adverb clauses of contrast that shows that the expected result of an action or the expected outcome of something is not met. For example, if I say I studied very hard. The expected outcome is that I am going to get a very good grade, right? But I can say, even though I studied very hard, and the unexpected result is I got a 5, for example. Even though I studied very hard, and then the unexpected result, I got a 5. Too bad, right? Then we have adverb clauses of manner, and we don't have many subordinators that introduce this kind of clauses. We have as if, as though. We can also use as by itself without the if. I don't like to do this because sometimes it can create confusion with the coordinating conjunction as that expresses result, okay? And also we can use the word like as a subordinator. From my prescriptivist point of view, I would say we shouldn't use the word like to introduce adverb clauses of manner, because like is not really a subordinating conjunction. The thing is that people started using it incorrectly, should I say. The people started using it incorrectly as with the meaning of as if or as though, right? Because basically they are very close in meaning, but it is not supposed to be used as a subordinating conjunction, but people continued to use it and used it and use it, and eventually people got so used to it that so many people use it, right? From the descriptivist point of view, in my formation, I would say, look, none of us speak any language 100% correctly, right? Just like in Spanish, we make mistakes when we speak. People who speak English natively, they also make mistakes when they speak. The one thing that I want you to consider is that sometimes people who live in the United States or other English-speaking countries, depending if they haven't had an academic formation in this area, in grammar and the language itself, they might actually be correcting some things that are not really mistakes. They are mistaken. It's like us. We don't speak our Spanish. We don't speak our Spanish 100% correctly, right? We don't do that. It happens, okay? So always make sure to double check whatever correction, whatever information you are given. Always remember to be critical of what I say, right? I don't own the language. I just have learned about it. I like it. I like how it works. I like its grammar. But it doesn't mean that I never provide you with incorrect information, right? And especially in grammar, there are different schools of thought in this, right? Finally, we have adverb clauses of condition that you have studied to ad nauseum, we could say, because you have studied them when you were taking your English levels, right? So, you know, we have 3 basic types of conditional clauses, right? Of adverb clauses of condition, and the most common word that introduces adverb clauses of condition is the word if. We also have unless, providing that, and so forth. And I am going to stop this explanation right now, and I'll get back to you on the next video to continue explaining about adverb clauses, guys.